Shalom Akim. Wada for joining today. Let's get started. So, Shalom. Today's lesson is going to be titled, "The Bible is for everybody on earth," but we're going to get into how it's only for the Israelites, or it belongs to the Israelites, I should say. So, but before we get into that, let's go and give all honor and glory and praises to YAHAWAH, BAHASHAM, YAHAWASHI, BAHASHAM, QADASH, Bracket the YAHAWAH, Bracket the YAHAWASHI, Bracket the YAHAWAH, Bracket the YAHAWASHI, Bracket the YAHAWAH, Bracket the YAHAWASHI, BAHASHAM, QADASH. Double honors to my teachers, the apostles and elders of the great millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect, who the house of David reborn again in this generation. And Shalom to the 130 Yasharallah, who today are known as the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, who before losing our true heritage, we were known as, and still are, the true Hebrew Israelites of the Holy Bible. So, like I said, today's lesson is entitled, "The Bible is for everybody on earth, but it belongs to the Israelites." Okay, and the reason I'm going to go into this is because one thing is I want to clarify something that these false churches over here have pushed out. Right, I watched a video today of a Christian, right? Looked like a so-called Edomite, and when I say Edomite, I'm talking about the Caucasian and Israeli race, right? He was basically going in and pushing in how the new church, or should I say the church, is the new spiritual Israel. Well, that's a complete lie. It's a fallacy made up completely by the church. Okay, the Bible does not speak of a spiritual Israel, meaning that the body of the church, or those people who believe in Jesus Christ, that they are the chosen people. Okay, that's a complete lie. Now, the reason why the church has come out with this, namely, is because you have a group of people over there in the land of Israel today who are referred to as the Jews, but they also are Edomites. Okay, you see, the Caucasian and Israeli race, though they pretend to be two separate people, they in fact go back to the same progenitor. They go back to a man called Esau, who was a man in the Bible, which, let me go ahead and get this real quick. Esau, who was the evil twin brother of Jacob. Jacob is who the true Israelites come from. The people who you would know today as the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans come from this man, okay? Jacob's name was changed to Israel, or Yasharal, and his 12 children, or should I say his 12 sons, they make up the 12 tribes of Israel, right? Now, Esau, being that he was the firstborn, he should have received the blessing of the firstborn, and also the inheritance, or the blessing of basically receiving the kingdom. But what happened is, not only did he lose his birthright and the blessing, but that ultimately was by the will of the Lord. And why is that? Well, because again, when you go through the Bible with a proper understanding of reincarnation and how we come back, you also understand that Esau was Cain in the reincarnation. Okay? Now, that being said, Esau was given a time to rule just like all these other nations were, and also he was ultimately given a blessing that he would live off the fatness of the earth, and he would live by his swords. And that's what we're currently living under right now. We're living under the last empire of the last heathen nation before the true empire comes in, right? The true world order that's ran by the Lord, and with us Israelites running the world, okay? Under the rules of the Bible, the rules of the Lord and the law. Now, that being said, like I said, back to the modern day Christianity or Protestantism that believes, or really just the westernized religion world of Catholicism, Christianity, they believe that the new chosen people that the Lord ultimately is going to give the kingdom to, is going to be to the body of believers or church goers who believe in Jesus Christ. Well, that's not true at all. Now they came up with this idea because, like I said again, there is currently some imposters living in the land of Israel today that refer to themselves as the Jewish people, but in fact they are also the Edomites. Okay, they along with their brethren all over the world, who basically make up the westernized world, right? That's America, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, England, England, France, Germany, Canada, all these countries where the European have conquered and are currently ruling. Those are the Edomite nations. Okay, those are the 12 sons of Esau, who are right now in their kingdom and in their rulership. Basically, it's their heaven right now. Okay, and as we can see, when you allow the wicked to rule, wickedness is going to prevail throughout the world. Okay, and that's why right now the world is extremely unfair. It's extremely evil on what's going on with the economy, the people, wars, right? Everything's a hustle. Everything is a scam, right? And that again is just a result of living under these defiled rulers who have defiled the laws and ultimately are running the world into the ground. Now that being said, those people over there in the land of Israel today, the imposter Israelites, known as the Jewish people or the Ashkenazi Khazars, right? They ultimately claim that they are the chosen people. Okay, and the thing is these churches, to combat that false doctrine, have come up with another false doctrine of themselves, right? That the body of the church goers, the believers of Jesus Christ, that they are the new spiritual Israel, and hence they are going to be the chosen people in the end time that the Lord is going to save when he returns, and are going to ultimately give the world over to in rulership. But again, both of those are lies. See, the true matter is, or the true fact is that there are a chosen people still, okay? And this chosen people isn't a random group of people, right? It ultimately is going to be the biblical Israelites, the same Israelites spoken of in the Bible, the same Israelites who God brought out of Egypt, described in the Exodus. These are the same Israelites that existed in the Bible that are alive today. Now, predominantly, those Israelites today are going to be the Negro, Latino, Native Americans, but also they're going to be the scattered Israelite foreigners who are coming out of every one of the 197 nations which exist today that the UN recognizes. Okay, now what I'm saying is that there's going to be Israelites coming out of every nation under the face of the earth. And what's going on is that this is why this isn't a black thing, it's not a Mexican thing, it's not a Native American thing. It is an Israelite thing. And this is why amongst the Israelites they're going to have many different looking people that are going to come out of all the nations, that are going to look like all the other nations. And this is described in Revelation 7. Okay? Now, but one common denominator that all these different groups and different multitude of people that are going to be coming out of all these nations is that they are all going to be biblically of the seed line or the bloodline of Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel, making them the descendants of Israel, right? They are the children of Israel. They are the children of God. Now, the thing about that is that these Israelites are going to have a peculiar spirit upon them, right? They're going to be, they're going to incline their ears to spiritual manners. They're going to look to the Lord, okay? And that's ultimately what the Bible says that the Israelites are going to do. Now, what does this mean? Does that mean that the churchgoers are not going to be saved? No, that doesn't mean that at all. But it means that everybody who goes to church isn't going to be saved. And why is that? Well, because you see, predominantly, people who go to church are going to more likely be Israelites. Okay, that's going to be that spirit in the Israelites that are going to seek a higher power. Now, again, this is another reason why these churches were created, was to ultimately to give a false counterfeit for the heritage of the Israelites. Now again, now that we're here in these end times, for example, the Israelites are now scattered throughout all the world, but predominantly in the Negro, Latino, Native American race. Okay, and again, it doesn't also mean that all Negro, Latino, Native Americans are going to be Israelites, because again, all nations, all nationalities have all been mixed, thanks to the working of the devil, and also just the will of the Lord. But again, to understand the Bible in its fullness, you have to understand that it is dealing with a race of people, okay? And the whole Bible is dealing about races and groups, right? All the tribes of the earth, as the Bible refers to it, okay? Let's go ahead and get started, and we're going to expand on this topic to explain how, again, the true chosen people aren't the people over there in the land of Israel today, claiming to be Jewish, claiming to be from the tribe of Levi, okay? But that the true Israelites are going to be the Negro, Latino, Native Americans, and all those whose father's lineage goes back to that bloodline, okay? And that the true Israelites are going to have these spiritual markers on us, right? We're going to be the ones in the world of all the nations who have gone into captivity through ships, that we've lost our heritage, hence we don't have our true last names, right? That we don't really have a place of our own, right? And that ultimately, till this day, till the end, till the day that the Lord comes back, that we're going to still be in a form of captivity, meaning that we're going to be on the low rung of society. We're not going to basically rule over anything. We're not going to be lending out. We're not going to be making any shot calls, right? We're not going to have seats at the UN that have any sort of authority. Okay, but let's go and get started with this. This is Isaiah. Let's go to Isaiah 25. Get this started. This is Isaiah 25 and 7. And he will destroy in this mountain the face of the covering cast over all people, and the veil that is spread over all nations. Okay, now what is that talking about? You see, when it talks about in this mountain, it's talking about in this current end time government, okay, in the world order, okay, because you see, though Babylon the Great is here in America, the entire world right now is being ran by the American hegemony, the Caucasian, Edomite, Israeli hegemony, right, that runs over the world. And that means that all the world is underneath the Babylonian rule, okay? So this mountain is talking about the world government that is basically, you know, up until recently has been running the world secretly, and now we can see through the fucking recent electing of Larry Fink, the BlackRock Israeli CEO, right, the Jewish CEO, that he's now going to be heading the World Economic Forum in an interim capacity, right? This devil, this shows you, you know, who really is in charge. Okay, it's these Edomites are in charge, and they're the ones that rule over this world government, right? This mountain described in this Bible, okay? This, where it says, and I will destroy in this mountain, right? What is he going to destroy? What is the Lord going to destroy in the end times in this world government, this government that rules over all the world, this wicked government? The face of the covering cast over all people, and the veil that is spread over all nations. You see, what that's talking about is that there is currently a veil or a facade or a mask over all the nations that exist upon the face of the earth today. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, first of all, you have to understand a bit of geography, okay? And anthropology, which means which is ultimately the studying of societies, right? Of people. When you understand that today in the world, there is 197 nations which the UN recognizes that exist on the earth today. Well, where did these 197 nations come from? Did they sprout out of the ground? Did they come from mushrooms? Did they come from different types of monkeys? No. They all came back from 3 groups of people. Or should I say, first of all, I should say is 18 nations, which is all these people, right? All these 18 nations, okay, is where all the 197 nations came from today. And these 18 nations all came from 3 groups of people: Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Okay, that's the way it works. And those 3 sons came from one man. That was Noah. Okay, and Noah ultimately comes from the seed line of Adam. Okay, now that being said, what we're here today to do is to go through the table of nations, right? To go through how all the nations of today's world all go back to these biblical 18 nations, right? And it's very important to understand this, right? This is something that they don't teach at these churches. Okay, and why is that? Well, because these churches, doesn't matter if it's that particular one there, the Jehovah's Witness, what do they call them? Watchtower or temples, the Mormon temples, right? Catholic churches or whatnot. None of them teach you nationality, and that's because they're all trying to amalgamate everybody into one group of people, and basically just say that your faith is ultimately going to save you, right? That your belief in so-called Jesus Christ, which is the false name of the Messiah. The Messiah's true name is YAHAWASHI. YAHAWASHI is Hebrew for He is salvation, He delivers. Okay? Well, again, now that the Lord has brought back His men, right, starting with the apostles, the elders, on down to brothers like me, the other Akim out there teaching, Akim like you that are watching, He's now given it to us to understand that these 197 nations that exist today on the face of the earth all go back to these biblical 18 nations. Okay? And when we understand what nation that you fall within these 18 nations, you now understand what is your place in the Bible and what the Bible has to do with you. And this is ultimately what I mean, that the Bible is for everybody on earth. Hey, Shalom, Adam, la144 for joining us. So again, like I said, so this is how we understand, that the Bible is for everybody on the earth, because there is nobody alive today which did not come out of these three sons, which came out of that one man, Noah, which descended from Adam. Okay? All those other people who survived from the previous world civilization, Atlantis, right, that came out of the line of Cain, that were there along with Noah, all those people, if they managed to survive all the world catastrophes that happened to the previous world civilization, and also to the tumultuous time that Noah was alive, all those people ended up dying, right? Let's go ahead and read that real quick. It's really important to understand that nobody survived that, okay? This is Genesis chapter 7 verse 18. And the waters prevailed and were increased greatly upon the earth, and the ark went up upon the face of the waters, and the waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth, and all the high hills that were under the whole heaven were covered. 15 cubits upwards did the waters prevail, and the mountains were covered. And all flesh died that moved upon the earth, both of fowl and of cattle, and of beasts, and every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, and every man, all in whose nostrils was the breath of life. Of all that was in the dry land died, and every living substance was destroyed, which was upon the face of the ground, both man and cattle, and the creeping things, and the fowls of the heaven, and they were destroyed from the earth. And Noah only remained alive, and they that were with him in the ark. Okay? So that right there is those 8 people that survived. That's Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and their 3 wives. Okay? So again, and I just wanted to bring that up because there's a Gnostic understanding, right? Basically a paganistic New Age understanding is that there are beings that survived from Atlantis period, right? That there's a bloodline that goes all the way back from Atlantis that just happens to rule the world today, and that they're incredibly smart and more superior than the rest of us puny mortals here on earth. That's bullshit. Okay, that didn't exist, right? As you read here in the Bible, the only people that survived was those 8 people that were on the ark, which was Noah and his family. Okay, and fucking spoiler alert, we are the descendants from those people who came from Atlantis. Okay, Adam, right, who we all come from, he came out of that world civilization that the Lord destroyed. Hey, Shalom, la144 for joining. So again, the thing is that these Edomite devils that like to spread out these Gnostic understandings, these or should I say the false doctrines, and the whole pagan analogy that they come from different bloodlines and stuff, and or you even have the bullshit conspiracy theories that they're reptilians, and they come from Alpha Centauri, and the Pleiades and all that stuff. That's a bunch of bullshit, right? What it is there's no human or no being on earth today that is not a human that descends from Noah. Okay, now those reptilians that people sometimes say they see or whatever, or when you see an Edomite that they literally slither on the news at somebody, or they have the weird eye slits. A lot of those weird eye slit video anomalies that we see online, a lot of that has to do with codec compression errors. Okay, if you really want to understand, most people don't fucking have eyes like that. However, there are in some cases where you do see weird shit like that. Okay, but again, those aren't because those people are reptilian, or that they come from a different line. What it is that they have massive amounts of demons on them, and for whatever reason, the angle that you're viewing them at, the composition of the elements in the time that lets you see a refracted image of whatever the person is, right? Or the demon literally tries to manifest, then you'll see eyes with slits, or you'll see somebody who looks like a fucking have reptilian like attributes. But again, that's not because they go back to a reptilian bloodline. That's because they have demons on them. They work with the demons. Okay, the elites of this society, they are infested, and they are compatriots with the left-hand angels. They work with demons. They sacrifice to them. They worship them. They pray to them. Okay, so that's where that whole reptilian belief really comes from. Okay, that's the whole origins of that. Because again, these are just regular human beings. These are descendants of Edomites, or descendants of Esau, who are the Edomites, who revel in you believing that they're more than humans, that they're this, that they're these superior beings that can outthink you. No, they're just fucking regular Edomites that have been given the power to rule at this time, which has given them a better understanding of a higher intellect in certain aspects, right? An ability to control the weaponry to a level that us Israelites, that we can only sometimes touch upon but cannot master like these Edomites do. Okay, so that being said, let's go and continue. So now that we understand that one of the end time prophecies is that the Lord is going to reveal the true identities of all the nations of the earth, that means that it's our job, starting with the apostles on down, to talk to everybody on earth, right? To talk to the heathens, to explain to them what is their role, right? When Edomites come up, we let them know, say, hey, look, you go back to the line of Esau, and for you right now, this is your kingdom, this is your heaven, but in the future, you are going to be dethroned, and ultimately you're going to go into captivity, and you're going to ultimately, perish after 1,000 years. When a Chinese person is to come up, right? You let them know what the plight of the Moab nation is, right? Moab being the biblical name for the Chinese, right? Ammon being the biblical name for the Japanese. Again, these are all the biblical names of all the nations out there. Okay. Now that being said, again, you got to remember is that there's been a lot of race mixing. Okay, and namely, it's happened between the Israelites and the Edomites, who have mixed in with all the other nations. So again, and the easiest way to break this down is to understand in the world, out of all the nations that exist, out of these 18 nations, there are 3 groups of people. Okay, the sons of God, who would be the Israelites, right? Whose father's lineage goes back to Jacob, Israel. The sons of man, which are all the other heathen nations that exist, which would be the other 17 other nations that come out of the loins of the descendants of Noah. And then the third would be the seed of the wicked, right? That would be the Edomites, right? The seed line that came out of Esau, okay? And when you get into that, and when you break that down, when you look at every one of these 197 nations upon the face of the earth, you got to understand that they're going to ultimately be mixed into 3 different groups of people. You have Edomites, for example. A good example of this would be look at China. Okay, China has a group of people within its society that tend to have a bit more livelier spirits. They tend to do more things. They tend to be more ingenuitive, okay? And these people are people like Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, those people, right? They look like full-on Chinese, Moabite, right? But again, if you were to follow their father's lineage all the way back, further than we could even, with even their records trace, more than likely, their father's lineage goes back to an Israelite that came from the loins of Jacob, okay? Now, these people within the Chinese society, they will go ahead and do great things, but one thing that they won't do is they won't prevail, they won't succeed, and they ultimately are oppressed. Look at Jackie Chan, what happened recently when he came out and he spoke a little bit I forgot what he did. No, I'm sorry. His son got caught smoking marijuana, right? And he had to come out and publicly apologize to all the people in China. And ultimately, he's right now like in a bad light with the Chinese government or something, because he was considered like not too loyal, or he did some things that were considered unloyal to the Chinese party, okay? And so again, he's being oppressed in one way or another. But again, look at the man and look at all the amazing things he did. Another person, Bruce Lee, an amazing so-called Chinese, right? Amazing Moabite, a man of a warrior, a man of renown, right? Went on to do great things, but at the end, ultimately, he was oppressed and he was put to death, right? By people say that it was, inner Chinese drama due to him revealing the secrets to the other heathen nations. But the point being is that he never went on to become a great and established man, right? Now let's take a look at the other Chinese that we know about, right? The people who tend to run China, right? These people who are very monotone, very serious, right? They have no flavor. They don't dance at bowls or balls. They don't do things of any type of I guess you'd say they're very dry people, right? When you look at the Communist Party, right? Or you look at the party chairs, right? Every once in a while they'll show videos here in America of this huge cabinet of people just sitting, right? And then these people talk. They're all very monotone. They're very dry, spiritually group people. But again, they have all the fucking power, right? They've risen to the tops of the power, to the point where even right now in China they're talking about like there's small talks of internal revolt, right? Though, and that's because again the Chinese party has come down very hard upon the Moabite people. And when you look into the Chinese revolution, right, the red wave that came in, a lot of those Chinese people, I forgot their names, the Fai Yang or the Qing Yang or whatever, but there's multiple families within the Chinese people that ultimately mixed in with Edom. Okay, when China was being open to the westernized world, a lot of these Edomites, especially a lot of these Amalekites, went over into China and ultimately made their homes there in the Chinese mountains. Okay, and they ultimately intermingled with the Chinese people, the Moabite people, and then they ultimately gained levels of power, right? They started to push forward their agenda, right? They opened their banks, they opened trade negotiations with the West, right? There's a great anime, if you like anime, it's on Netflix. It's called The Blue-Eyed Samurai, right? It's about this girl samurai, which that's fucking off. But the point being is that in this story, this samurai woman, the reason why she's blue-eyed is because she has an Edomite father. So ultimately, she's an Edomite, right? Her Edomite father came from basically the East Indian trading company into China, and basically slept with a bunch of Chinese women and birthed that woman. And again, it's crazy because they revere this blue-eyed samurai lady as a demon, right? And the thing is that lady, when you look at her, she looks like a mixture of Chinese, and we have a lot of those people today in America, right? Whose father's an Edomite, but their mother is a Moabite, right? Esau loves himself some fucking Moabites, okay, and Ammonites, okay. But again, when these children are born, they look like little less Mongoloid features, okay. And then eventually, what ends up happening is that those mixed children, and really there's no such thing as mixed, because again, remember, you are what your father is. So it doesn't matter what your mom is, you are always what your father is. But those children will always go back and start to mingle amongst their mother's heritage, okay? And when that starts happening, is they then start having children, and those children end up becoming more Chinese looking, more Japanese looking, okay? And then, but eventually happens is 4, 5, 6 generations down the road, you have Edomites that look fully like Chinese people. The brother Adonana brings out Ecclesiastes 4:16. There is no end of all the people, even of all that have been before them. They also that come after shall not rejoice in them. Surely this also is a vanity and vexation of spirit. Beautiful, right? So there's no such thing as people dying off, as groups of people dying off. No, like that devil vocab Malone, he says, oh, the Edomites were done away with. No, not at all. The Edomites, especially the Edomites, are here till the end days. It tells us so in prophecy that they're going to be one of the main characters. They're the main villains of the end time events. So that being said, like the brother just shared, all the people that came before, though their nationality, their race name may have faded in time, they may have gotten new names. Like for example, the Persian Mede Empire. What happened to the Medes? Right? Well, they didn't go away. They're still here, but they're now referred to as Iranians. They're now, or Persians or Iranians. And pretty soon, a couple more centuries, what's going to happen is that the term Persian is going to go away. And does that mean that the Persian people have faded and died off? No. That just means that those Persians now have a new identity. That identity being that nation of Iran. Okay? So that being said, back to my whole Chinese and Edomite analogy, right? So again, within the Chinese culture, you have those individuals who stand out, but they do great things, but they don't have the authority. Those, more likely, their fathers goes back to the bloodline of Israel, making them Israelites, right? Or should I say Israelite, Gentile Israelites, because they don't know that they're Israelites. And then you have the other people in the Chinese nationality who have all the authority. They have no flavor. They're very dry, and they're people, and they're very authoritarian, right? They also have no spiritual inkling, right? They have no desire to seek after a higher power. They themselves see themselves as God, right? Xi Jinping, they say that he goes back to this Jewish Chinese family, the Kaifeng Chinese, the Kaifeng Chinese family. Those are basically Amalekites who started large banking dynasties there in China, and they then would fund the Chinese emperors, and they gained power. And Xi Jinping, he comes from that bloodline, meaning that he's an Amalekite sitting on top. Though he may look Chinese, he's an Amalekite, right? Hence, he would be the seed of the wicked, okay? And then the third group of people within the Chinese culture, these are just the indigenous Moabites, the indigenous Chinese people that make up that society. These are those workers, or those Chinese people who are just in the background. They're just there working, living, enjoying their life, doing what they're told, and reveling, or should I say, basically worshiping the other Chinese people who do amazing things, who did go out and have that amazing spirit on them. Okay, and that is how basically every nation, every one of the 197 nations are split up today. They're split up into groups of 3 people. Okay, and those 3 groups of people is the sons of God, the sons of man, and the sons of the wicked one. Okay, and so again, though we say here that that the Israelites are the Negro, Latino, Native Americans, that is also mixed in that those 3 groups of people. There's going to be, for example, within the so-called Negro community, you're going to have the children of Israel, right? And these are going to be the people of our nation, right, who are going to have that beautiful spirit on them, are doing amazing things. The inventors, the people who are out there, being luminaries to our people, okay, right? And then you have the other Israelites who are just naturally just good people, right? And then also or I'm sorry, the sons of man, and these are those odd occasions where you have a literal Chinese man, or a Taiwanese, or Egyptian, or Armenian, or other people of these other heathen nations who've come in and slept with our women, and they now have children, and those children may look like a so-called Negro, so-called Mexican, so-called Indian, but in them spiritually is the spirit of one of these other sons of men, right? These heathen nations, right? This is why they're the ones that don't really do much. They're the quiet cousins, the ones that don't really meld right with us at the family barbecues, right? And then again, then you also have the third group, the seed of the wicked, okay? And that's our fucking women going to be with these Edomites, having children. And again, like for example, a good example of this would be Doja Cat. Doja Cat is an Amalekite. She's a so-called Jewish woman who looks like a black woman, but look at her, man. She's a fucking demon, okay? And she gives off all those spiritual aspects about it, man, right? Though she is seen as a so-called one of us in the black community, spiritually or realistically, she's an Edomite. She's a dark-skinned Edomite, okay? Another person I believe too is Jesse Lee Peterson, man. When you look at him, his spirit is all off, man. He has no vibe. He's always fucking touting these Edomites as the saviors of the world, right? He calls Donald Trump the Great White Hope, right? And he fucking really means about it, right? And there's that whole homosexuality scandal about him, man. And that's another spiritual sign of these Edomites. Is they're big time into that whole alternative lifestyle, man. Right? That, in fact, look at these Amalekites, man. They revel in that shit, man. So either way, so that right there is the breakdown of these 18 nations and how they go, or how they translate today to the 197 nations, and that those 197 nations ultimately are going to be a mixture of three groups of people, which again are those three groups we just went over. So let's go and move on and start going into the breakdown of these nationalities. So let's go ahead and read. Let's go to Genesis 10, where the breakdown of the table of nations that the Bible speaks of, right? This is Genesis 10, verse 1. Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and unto them were sons born after the flood. This is Japheth. Verse 2. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, and Magog, and Madai, and Joan, and Tubal, and Meshach, and Tyrus, and the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, and Riphtah, and Togarmah, and the sons of Eon, Elisha, and Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim. By these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, every one after his tongue, after their families, in their nations. Now what I just read here were the original Europeans, okay? With the earth itself, I wish I had the map, but when you look at the map of the ancient time, during this time, all of what we know today as Turkey, all the way to Europe, that all belonged to these sons, the sons of Japheth. Okay, this is why we're always telling you that the original Europeans were Japhetic. Now today, the Japhetic people of today would be the people that we would know as the people of the South Seas. That would be the Fijian, the Samoan, Hawaiian, the Tongan, right? The Filipinos. Then like the people of Thailand, Malaysia, right? Malaysia and Thailand, a lot of those are mixtures of the Japhetic line, also with the lines of Ammon and also Moab. But again, predominantly the people of the South Seas is where the children of Japheth dwell today. Okay, now they ultimately got kicked out of that land when Esau started heading west and started conquering those lands little by little. Okay, so this is now one thing in there too, when it says Ashkenaz, Ashkenaz, a lot of people confuse today's modern Israelis, right, the Khazarian Jews, as going back to Ashkenaz, right? And the thing is that that's far from the truth, right? The Bible, and this is where understanding Bible prophecy is very important. because nowhere in the Bible prophecy does it say that Japheth would be a critical player or one of the main villains in the end times. Okay, basically, they're just background characters. Okay, now the reason why the Israelis took on the Ashkenazi name, and man, this is one of my biggest regrets in the streets when I was learning. When I started delving into the whole Amalekite bloodline and all this stuff, and looking into the Schechter letters, which is the letters that prove that there was a mass conversions of all the Khazarians to Judaism, and they then took on that nationality. There was also, I had come across it, there's basically a family tree line showing the prominent Khazarians. They were showing these, ooh, motherfucker, dude. There was almost a fucking crash here. Slock Yakim. People fucking rushing to go fucking nowhere, man. So again, what I was saying is I had come across a family tree line of the prominent Khazarians who had married into the Ashkenaz family, okay, and it had their names and everything. A lot of these Ashkenazi princesses basically had given their women over to the Khazarian kings or Khazarian nobility, okay, and Edom, just like they always do, they always take on the identity or the heritage of their wives, okay. This is why they were referring to themselves as Ashkenaz, okay, because the people that they had married into were the original Europeans. These were like the original Germans, the original people in that area, okay. Those were the original Ashkenaz, okay. Now that's that little tidbit. Let's continue. The next are the children of Ham, the true Africans, okay. And Ham, again, from where the bottom of Israel and all the way basically the whole continent of Africa is what was given over to Ham, okay. Verse 6, and the sons of Ham, Cush and Mizraim and Put and Canaan, and the sons of Cush, Seba, Havilah and Sabath and Rima and Sabteka, and the sons of Rima, Sheba and Dedan. And Cush begat Nimrod, and he began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before Yahweh. Therefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before Yahweh. And in the beginning of his kingdom was Babel and Erech and Akkad and Kelna and the land of Shinar, right? And these are the original Hamites, okay, the true Africans. So this would include today the Ethiopians, for example, the modern day Egyptians don't go back to Mizraim, okay? The true, these Cush and Canaan and all those, the original Egyptians, Mizraim, they go back to they today would be known as the people of the Congo, right? The Central African people, right? The people, the true, basically black Africans, okay? Like when you look at the NBA, Matumbo, that big tall ass black African guy, that right there, that's a true ass Hamite, man. That would be like your true Mizraimite, okay? Now let's go down. Now let's just skip now over the Hamites. Let's go down to verse 21 to talk about our line, right? The line of Shem. Verse 21. And unto Shem also, the father of all the children of Eber. Eber is where we get the name Hebrew from, okay? The brother of Japheth, the elder, even to him were children born. The children of Shem, Elam, who are today's, they're known as those East Indian people, you know, the red dot Indians. And Arphaxad, that's us. We come from the line of Arphaxad. And Lud and Aram. Aram would be like the Syrians and like the Iraqis, like those old Arab nations, okay? And it says, and 23, and the children of Aram, Uz and Hul and Gether and Mash, and Arphaxad begot Salah, and Salah begot Eber, And Eber was born 2 sons. The name of one was Peleg, and in his days was the earth divided. And his brother's name was Joktan, right? And again, see right there, going down the chosen line are facts. Because remember, out of Noah's 3 sons, the Lord chose Shem. And out of Shem, he had 5 sons. And the Lord ultimately chose the son called Arphaxad. Now, as you've seen, Arphaxad had sons, right? He had 1 son, and then they had sons, Joktan and Peleg. Ultimately, the Lord chose Peleg. And again, this is the dividing of the seed line, okay? Dividing and basically refining and distilling that Holy Spirit, or that holy line that ultimately culminated in us Israelites. This is why the Lord goes in and says that with hard work he's made us. He's made us. So let's go and continue. And that's enough about that, because then it just goes into like smaller individuals. Now let me just finish with this. 32. These are the families of the sons of Noah after their generations and their nations, and by these were the nations divided in the earth after the flood. And this right here, at this point, there are 13 biblical nations at this point in the Bible. By the time we get to Genesis 11, that's 13. Now again, you're probably saying, hey Yeshaya, I thought you said 18 nations. Well, exactly, true. That's what the rest of Genesis is. It's about the bringing forth of those additional 5 nations which would rule upon the face of the earth, and which, again, the story, the narrative of the Bible focuses on. Again, remember, the Bible is for everybody, which means everybody in the earth is in this Bible, right? Their story, they have a story or a part in this Bible. Right now, we just read through and basically talked about 13 of the 18 nations upon the face of the earth, right? That is their lot of the story. Now later on, we're going to get into a little bit more about what their role on earth is when it comes to the children of Israel, that being the Negro, Latino, Native Americans. So let's go ahead and get back to this. This is let's go ahead and read the 14th born nation that comes into effect. Okay, and this right here is where you can read about it. This is Genesis 16 and 15. Actually, yeah, 15 and 16. And Hagar bare Abram a son, and Abram called his son's name, which Hagar bare, Ishmael. And Abram was 86 years old, basically 86, when Hagar bare Ishmael to Abram. Now, ultimately, let me go ahead and read or basically, should I say, this here is now talking about the Arabs. So the people that you know today as the Saudi Arabians, the Qatari, the people of Yemen. Really, Yemen is a mixture of Ethiopian and Arabs. But again, the people right there in the Saudi Arabia Peninsula, right? Even the Palestinians, those are in Jordan, all the Arabs, okay, in that section in the Levant, those are the descendants of Ishmael, okay? That's why we refer to them as the Ishmaelites, okay? They themselves know that they are the Ishmaelites in their own Quran, right? Because again, why? Because they didn't lose their heritage. They still have their ancestral, ancient biblical heritage, okay? Now, the prophecy which would befall Ishmael, I just want to read it real quick. I got to jump back up into verse 12. It says, actually I'll start at 11. And the angel of Yahawah said unto her, this is talking about Gabriel, right? Or as the Arabs refer to him as Jibril, right? But basically we refer to him as Gabriela, or, you know. So the thing is it says, and the angel of Yahawah said unto her, behold, thou art with child, and shalt bear a son, and shalt call his name Ishmael, because Yahawah hath heard thy affliction, and he will be a wild man. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. This is why all the Arabs, all the Saudi Arabian, all the Qatari, all the different tribes of the Arabs, they all dwell with each other, right? Yeah, you'll have, exceptions. You'll have, a prince or children of the princes over here, but they're over here for business. They're over here really to dwell in a large group of people, right? But the majority of those people are combined over there into the Saudi Arabian peninsula, okay? Now notice it said that they're going to be a wild man and their hand is going to be against everybody. Now look at Ishmael and look what he's doing now in these end days. Now that he's actually journeying up to England, right? Even though, again, it's a small majority of Arabs who are going up into to England, but they're doing some crazy shit there, man. Right? They're raping, pillaging, right? They're basically they've been invited there to pillage by these Edomites that are seeking to destroy these world powers, man. And there's a whole other subject about that, man, because you see, these elites, they no longer are tied to these nations, right? They see and this is crazy because this goes into these Edomites' spiritual side, man. You see, one thing about these Edomites in the Bible tells you that spiritually they would be vagabonds and fugitives, okay? Going back to their curse when they originally got it from their forefather Cain, okay? This is why these elites, who are predominantly these Edomites, travel the world, okay? This is why they're major boat or yacht sailors and stuff like that, because again, they're vagabonds. Vagabonds are basically people who travel from place to place. Those back in the day, they used to call those hobos that had that little stick with the little bag or a bindle bag with all their little food and stuff. They would travel the railroads. They're always wanderers, right? Those were called vagabonds, okay? And well, that's your Edomites today. This is why they're all into RVing, going all over the place, traveling the world. Well, the elites of our society, who are these Edomites, they are nationless, right? They don't tie themselves to a particular nation. So what they're doing now, check this out, is that they're basically destroying all their old homelands, England, America, all the Germany, and they're flooding them with all these different nationalities, because one, they no longer need these old nations to build their wealth from. They're now nationless. They're travelers of the world, right? Or you probably heard that famous saying, they're citizens of the world. Well, in doing so, because they got no home base, they're okay by destroying it through outsourcing production, importing all the slave labor, basically making these places horrible to live in, right? But making it so that way they can still generate money through taxes and that sort of thing, right? That's really what's going on, right? Some people refer to this as the Caligari plan that Amalek created, where he's going to flood all the westernized world with all these different heathen nations to thin out the Edomite bloodline or the Caucasian bloodline. But again, this is ultimately because the top kings of Edom, they now want a world where they can just be vagabonds and they can just be rulers over the vast masses of the heathen nations, okay? That shows you the wicked future that these devils have planned for us, okay? But like I said, these Arabs, or should I say the Ishmaelites, they ultimately are the 14th nation that comes into existence that the Bible records. Now again, he was the firstborn of Abram, right, whose name was later changed to Abraham, but he was rejected. And why was he rejected? Well, because again, Abram had slept with Hagar. Now Hagar, when you understand who she was an Egyptian, a Hamite. And the Lord's not dealing with these Hamites, right? Because why? Because just like he rejected Ham all the way back in the time when he selected between Shem, Ham, and Japheth, he's not going to mix in again the defiled seed line of Ham into his work. So again, though these Arabs, were blessed, right? It tells you later on when you read the Bible that the Lord blessed Hagar, that he would have 12 princes. Well, that they're currently living in their heaven right now. Right now is basically the time that these Arabs have to revel upon the face of the earth, right? They're being blessed right now. Now, really, their true blessing, their true kingdom, went all the way back when you get into the Ottoman Empire. Okay, the Ottoman Empire, you hear about when the Crusades took place, and they basically they won the Crusades, and ultimately they ruled. I think it was like from the 1400s. I forget the timeline, but they ultimately took over Jerusalem and all that Levant area. Now that lasted all the way up until World War I, when they ultimately split up and they became what's known as the Turkish Empire, right? The Turkish Empire that we know today was the remnants of the Ottoman Empire, okay? And the Ottoman Empire ultimately they lost in World War I, and what we have today as Turkey is really the remnants of that Ottoman Empire. The Arabians also, Saudi Arabia, all that stuff. Again, that's just a remnant of that old Ottoman Empire that existed, that was demolished or broke to pieces by the hammer of the earth, that being the Edomites and their allied access, or I'm sorry, their allied nations that came in and won World War I. Now that being said, these Arabs, they were ultimately not selected because, like I said again, remember, the Lord is ultimately purifying and refining the human genome, right? The human seed line, right, from that came from Adam. Now, ultimately, the Lord, just like, for example, I've said this before, but let's say you're trying to get, what's a good thing? I'm trying to think of a better example of this. But let's say you're trying to distill whiskey, right? Let's say you're distilling whiskey or vodka, right? Let's say you're distilling vodka. Well, you get it from potatoes, okay? What you do is you chop up potatoes, you know, and you mash them up and you put them in a vat with water, sugar, a little bit of yeast, and you let it ferment, okay? And then it comes out and it looks like a nasty, you know, full of, you know, looks like pus and everything. It's nasty. What you do is you basically, after you let it like ferment for a while and all those complex sugars have been built up, you then start to distill it, right? Basically the same thing the Lord did with the human genome, right? He put all the ingredients together. He allowed it to culminate, and that's why after the flood, the Lord basically let the line of Shem basically go on and basically grow and ferment, I guess you could say, right? But by the time when Abraham was there in the land of Ur, of the Chaldees, that's when the Lord said, okay, you know what? Let's go ahead and start this distillation process, okay? So just like when you're making vodka, you take this batch of all the stuff that has been mixed together, the potato, the sugar, the yeast, the water, and anything else you want to put in it, you start to cook it, okay? And when you start to cook it, what happens is all the vapor from all the alcohol starts to rise up in your distiller, okay? And then the way that through the pipes and all these mechanisms, you then take that steam that's now boiled up and it condenses, okay? And it condenses, and what happens, it becomes into a liquid, and that liquid basically drops into a little container. Now you've taken this purified, you know, delicious liquid that's very expensive, and now you have this, you know, batch of crap, right? Old rotten potatoes and just yeast, just nasty shit, right? That's only good enough to be given to pigs or, you know, thrown out. Well, what happens is, why would you, as a distiller of fine vodka, because again, you could even refine that vodka down even more. You could bake, you could cook it even more and distill it even more, so it becomes even more purified. Why would you take this product that you, let's say, refined 3 or 4 times, right? And you grab a spoonful of that mash, that rotten potato stuff, and pour it back into the vodka? You wouldn't do that, because you would ruin the distillation. You would ruin the all that work you did. So that's the same thing why the Lord did not choose Ishmael, is because by doing so, he would bring in the rejected Hamite seed line back into the line that the Lord is working on building. Okay, so that's why the Lord didn't choose Ishmael. Now that we have established where the 14th nation comes from, let's go and read where the other 15th and 16th bloodline comes from. So to do that, we just got to jump a little bit forward, and we'll read to Genesis 19. Now, I'm just going to read the pertinent part. And and I'll go over the details of how this all went down. This is Genesis chapter 19 and 36. Thus were both daughters of Lot with child by their father, and the firstborn bare a son, and called his name Moab, and the same is the father of the Moabites unto this day. And the younger she also bare a son, and called his name Ben-Ami, and the same is the father of the children of Ammon. Now, the Moabites, those would be the people that we would refer to today as the so-called Chinese people. And the Ammon, he would be the people that we would refer to today as the so-called Japanese people. Okay? So this is why they have the same Mongoloidism, okay? Because again, it's that seed line that got damaged because again the father slept with his daughters. Okay? So the thing is going forward, these two brethren would go on to be a thorn in Israel's side and ultimately enslave us, right? When you read First Kings, you can read about how we came up against Moab and Ammon, and how they had us under captivity for a while, right? And how ultimately we broke away from them, right? Now the thing is that these people would go on to become a great nation, great and big, right? And those people today, like I said, would be known as the Chinese nation, the Chinese Empire, which we all know that the Chinese Empire had its time to rule during like the Ming Dynasty and all those periods where they were in rulership over on their side of the earth. Because again, when you look at the biblical timeline, or the biblical maps, excuse me. Let's see if I can show you this. So here is here we go. That's right. That looked right. So right here, all these highlighted areas here are all the 12 tribes locations there in the land of Israel. Now over here, this is where Ammon basically was Ammon's land, and over here was Moab's land. Okay, and they dwelt on this side, and eventually what ended up happening is that they eventually got pushed to the east. Okay, and they went to what's known as the Oriental. Okay, they didn't go to the Occidental, which is west. Oriental just means east. Occidental means west. Okay, this is why they're referred to as the Oriental races. Okay, so that being said, that is where the 15th and 16th nation comes from. And again, they were not selected. And why is that? Well, because again, God chose Abraham over Lot. Okay, and again, then Lot ultimately, we're just seeing what happened to him and his line. Okay, so but again, remember, Lot was a good man, and ultimately for these events, unfortunately, because they were, of the issues that took place, and because of the false, the bad decisions that those two women made, it ultimately cursed that nation to have those features that they have. Now, this is ultimately, when you look at those people today, though they have their own issues, right? They have kind of abominable, diets. They are, they're honorable people. Look, especially the children of Ammon. They're very honorable people. Okay, and again, in certain people within the Chinese Empire are also very honorable people. But again, this is just because, again, it goes back to these spiritual markers that came from their forefathers, that being Lot. Okay, now again, when you look at people like the Ethiopians, the Somalians, man, these are some wicked ass people, man. They have some badass traits on them, man. They're culturally they're corrupted, right? You had that fucking Edomite devil, Matt Walsh, is doing expose on Wisconsin and their Somali problem, man. Talking about how they're all fucking corrupt as fuck, and he revealed all the corruption that's going on, even with those Somali politicians who are being found giving bribes and everything, man. And why is that? Right? Even fucking Brickface girl, right? That girl who apparently got a brick thrown at her face, and we find out that she was fucking lying about it the whole time, and that she pulled that scam before, right? That's because those people in their culture, that's what they do, right? And why is that? Well, because again, when you trace back their lineage back to the seed line of Ham, they had those defilements, right? This is why the Lord was filtering out these people, because again, in these groups of people that the Lord filtered out, there was something in that bloodline, in that seed line, which was just off, right? Now, coming back to one of the latter separations between Esau, that being the progenitor of the Israeli and Caucasian race, and Jacob, look at what Esau's done, man. They have small little crazy traits about them, which goes back to their forefathers, right? One, that they're extremely proficient in weaponry, that they just happen to always fail up, right? They're you know, well, really that's a blessing. But other things like they love fucking raw meat. They love to eat their meat with blood in it. That goes back to their forefather, Esau, right? Now, when you look on the other hand, us Israelites and the descendants of Jacob, right? Look at our people, right? We have the same traits, the same honor, and basically the features that come from them, right? Being religious, seeking to please the Lord, being righteous men, being inventors, right? Remember, it tells you how Jacob how Jacob, Isaac, and also the 12 tribes, they were men of ability to do things. They were able to make things, right? Look at Daniel, right? Well, I'm sorry, Joseph, right? She's probably the same person, but the thing is these all these traits are Israelites traits, and these are the traits that the Lord ultimately was seeking to get out of the human genome, right? When he looked at Adam and he ultimately started that distillation process, this is all the features found in the Israelites, right? Namely the 1/3 of Israel, right, are the traits that the Lord was looking to get, right? These are this is the Zion that the Lord is seeking to make, that monument that the Lord wants to make above all the people of the world. Okay, well, let's go and move on and get to the final 17th and 18th nation that came to be. And to that we just go to Genesis 25 and 20. And it says, and Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah to wife, the daughter of Bethuel the Syrian, right? And remember, the Syrians come from one of Shem's sons, right? That being Aram. Okay, so again, he was still within that bloodline that he had distilled. So instead of him going back and getting from the slop bucket of that rotten potato, right, which like I equated to like the Hamite bloodline, he simply went to one of the earlier distillations of vodka, which is just it's a less purified vodka. It's still a very, purified, clean, beautiful drink. But then he took that and then he put that into the newer distill, because why? Just like distillers, right? That they'll mix their different distillations to get a good blend. Well, that's what the Lord was doing, right? He was bringing forward a woman from an earlier distillation, that being Rebekah, right, who came from the line of Aram, and then he basically melted with his latest distillation, right? Continuing, it says, the daughter of Bethuel the Syrian, Padam Aram, the sister of Laban the Syrian, and Isaac entreated YAHAWAH for his wife because she was barren, and YAHAWAH was entreated of him, and Rebekah was his wife conceived, and the children struggled together within her. And she said, if it be so, why am I thus? And she went to inquire of YAHAWAH, right? So again, Rebekah being pregnant, she had these two children in her stomach. She didn't know. She didn't know she had twins, right? There's no sonograph machines back then. There was nothing like that, right? You basically, it was a surprise up until they were born. So, but she just kept feeling all this commotion, all this pain in her stomach from things moving, to the point where she had to go and ask the Lord, why was things, why was there so much tumult? Why was there so much movement and pain in her stomach because of this? Well, it said, verse 23, and YAHAWAH said unto her, 2 nations are in thy womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels, and one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. And when her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb. So imagine this, right? So she had already been, maybe let's say 3-4 months, right? That's usually when the babies start to, really it's like 4 to 6 months is when the babies really start to move around. But I could probably imagine it's probably a little sooner when there's twins in there. But all this time she had heard this prophecy, right? This word that there should be 2 nations in my stomach. What does that mean? And that 2 manners of people. So she thought maybe there's can be 2. And then what eventually happened is months later, when she was finally gave birth, she seen that there was 2 children. So in fact, the prophecy was true. Okay. So not only what else was told in the prophecy? One is that the elder shall serve the younger. So Rebecca knew back then that the baby that came out last, right, the younger, he was going to be the ruler. He was going to be the leader over his older brother. So when it came time that because again, a lot of these fucking Christians, these people here, really it's these Edomites, because they're butt hurt about losing the blessing, right? They say, oh, Jacob stole the blessing from Esau. That makes him a crook, right? No, dumbasses. The Lord had already assigned it. It even tells you in the Bible, right? That through what was it? So that election may stand, that the Lord ultimately chose Jacob. And that's why Rebecca, seeing the situation coming forward, seeing that her husband was dying on his bed, and that he had been stricken with blindness, and that he's seen that her older son had gone out to the field and he was about to get the blessing, she knew that the Lord told her that the younger son was going to be the ruler. So she knew that she had to act, and she had to make sure that Esau did not get the blessing, and that her son Jacob was given the blessing. So that's why she did all that she did, and that's why she said, let that curse come upon me, right? Saying that if Jacob got in trouble for deceiving his dad, that ultimately that would fall upon the wife. Now, that being said, let's continue. Verse 25. And the first came out red all over like a hairy garment, and they called his name Esau. Okay? And that right there is the people that we were referred to today as the Caucasian and Israeli race. They go back to that line of Esau. Now again, understanding reincarnation, this was Cain coming back in the reincarnation. This is why he came out red. Now again, what do I mean by that? Well, when the Lord gave Cain his mark, what he did is he did the exact same thing that he did to Moses and his sister Miriam when he wanted to interact with them, right? First with Moses, when he wanted to show him a miracle, he told him put his hand into his coat, in his bosom, and pull it out, and his hand came out leprous, white as snow. And then also later on, when the Lord was punishing Miriam for speaking in authority over men, right? And for trying to get authority over her brother Moses, the Lord turned her leprous white, and she was put out of the camp until the Lord reversed it. So that same mark that was displayed to Moses and put upon Miriam for a time being was the mark that the Lord put upon Cain, and he kept that mark on him up until his dying day, right? And not only through his dying day, but when he came back in the reincarnation, he came out of the womb with no melanin. He was white and leprous. Now when you look at these Edomites, when they're born and they're babies, they come out looking like red tomatoes, man. They're extremely red, which is why the Bible here said he first came out red all over, like and what else? Like a hairy garment, right? Meaning that he was also a very hairy kid, right? Now again, when you look at Caucasians and Israelis, they come out very, very red and they have a lot of hair, right? They're like, oh, not only do they have usually have a full head of hair, right? But again, on their back, all the way on their back, it's always usually full of hair. The little legs, they're very hairy people. Okay, that's just the way it is. And again, that just it's a side effect of that bloodline. Okay. Now next, so that right there is the 17th nation to come into existence on the world. Okay, and that would be the nation of Edom, who are the people that we will refer to today as the Caucasian and Israeli race. Verse 26, and after that came his brother out, and his hand took hold of Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob, or Jacob, and Isaac was 80 years old when she bare them, right? Basically 60 years old. Now notice they didn't mention anything about Jacob, right? His color or anything about it, right? Because why? Because he came out like a normal looking baby, which in that time would have been like what you would refer to as a so-called Negro baby, okay? A so-called black baby, okay? So that right there is the creation of the last biblical nation that exists upon the face of the earth. That would be the 18th nation, known as the nation of YAHAWAH, or Israel, okay? The Israelites, okay? That right there is the 18th nations that are upon the face of the earth today, which have now turned into the 197 nations. Okay, so now let's go and move on to this, because again, a lot of people bring up the notion when they're out there in deep, biblical waters, trying to stay afloat. They'll bring out the notions. Well, we all came from Adam. Right, and it's true. We just read it, right? That the first of 13 nations and then the following 5 nations, they all came from the seed line which came out of Adam. But as I was just reading, right, and I'm hopefully able to have been able to explain plainly that this seed line has been distilled. It's been separated. Well, let's go and read that in the Bible. That makes it very clear that though everybody comes from the line of Adam, that there is a clear separation between these nations. This is Deuteronomy 32:8. When the Most High divided the nations, their inheritance, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Israel. For Yahawah, Bahashem Yahawa's portion is his people. Jacob is the lot of his inheritance. Okay, so what that means is that Jacob, or Israel, right, and all his descendants, that is the Lord's portion. Those are the people who the Lord ultimately has chosen for himself. Okay, let's say you're a baker and you make all these different loaves of bread, right? The baker there, he has all these loaves and he's gonna choose one loaf. He's like, man, that loaf came out perfect. This is a perfect crunch. I'm gonna make, this is mine. Right? That's what the Lord did. The Lord chose out of making all of these loaves of bread, all these people, all these nations. The Lord said, okay, he looked at Jacob, he's all, that one, that's mine right there. And that's why we are the children of Israel, or the children of God, right? Yahshua, which is literally in Hebrew for he, prince, power, right? Yah is God's name, power, right? Shar is prince, and I'm sorry, yeah, Yasharallah, and then La, or at the end, is power, right? So he, prince, power, right? So God, princes of God, and the power, right? So, or he, meaning us, that we are the princes of power, right? Yasharallah, right? So the thing is that right there makes it plain that the Lord, not only did he set the bounds of these nations, meaning that they were only going to get so far, they were only going to be allowed to get so high in this world. And again, when you look at these 18 nations, like I said, they've all had their time upon the face of the earth to rule, to have their empire, to have us Israelites in captivity. Okay, and you can read about this all in the Bible. Okay, but again, the reason why they didn't stay in power and they didn't continue their empires, why all these empires of the other heathen nations, why they always fell, is because of this. He set the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Israel, right? Which means that the Lord only allowed these nations to get up so high and rule for a certain time because of why? because he was using them, you know, for a cause. To do what? To test us Israelites, and that could be found in another scripture. That is what's that? That's this. This is Job or Judges 2:20. Judges 2:20, and the anger of Yahweh was hot against Israel, and he said, because that this people hath transgressed my covenant which I commanded their fathers, I have not hearkened unto my voice, I also will not henceforth drive out any from before them of the nations which Joshua left when he died, that through them I may prove Israel whether they will keep the way of Yahweh, or walk therein as their fathers did keep it, or not. Therefore Yahweh left those nations without driving them out hastily, neither delivered he them into the hands of Joshua. Okay, so right there it shows you that these other nations, that they were divided, and they were all given their bounds that they couldn't pass, right? And why? Well, because again, they were all being used to basically cultivate and build us Israelites up. Okay, and right now we're currently, like I said, we're living in the last empire of the heathen nation, that being the nation of Edom. And these devils, they're not going to be able to prolong the bounds that the Lord has set upon them, right? It even tells us in Job that the Lord has set a bound upon them that they cannot pass. And that's what these devils are ultimately going to try to do when they fight against the Lord, and also trying to either kill off us Israelites or chip us, so that way he disqualifies us from the blessing that we're about to get. But that ain't how it works. The Lord isn't going to allow these devils to prevail. He's only going to get 2 out of every 3 of us, but the Lord's going to raise 1 out of every 3 of us Israelites. That's the elect. That's the 144,000 plus the 1/3 of Israel that's going to make it, because we're going to wake up and we're going to get right with the Lord. We're going to come back to our true heritage. We're going to come back to knowing God's true name, the Messiah's true name, and we're going to be keeping the laws to the best of our ability, waiting for the Lord, right? So that being said, let's go and move on. Let's go to Psalms 22. Psalms 22 and 27. All the ends of the world shall remember and turn unto Yahweh, and all the kindreds of the nations shall worship before thee. For the kingdom is Yahweh's, and he is the governor amongst the nations. Okay? So this is why, like I said, this shows that the Lord is over all these different nations. Okay? And it's most plainly to see over the Arab and the Iranian nations, right? Because they worship God, but they worship him through different names. The Arabs call him Allah, which is just Hebrew for all power. And I forgot what the Iranians call him. They practice something called Zoroastrianism, and Zoroastrianism goes back to Zoroaster, who was one of Shem's five sons. Elam and stuff. But there was an Elamite called Zoroaster, and he communicated with the angels, and the angels told him that God would ultimately rule over the world, and that he was raising up his they call them the divine nobles, right? And that they were going to be fighting throughout all history a fight of good and evil, and that it was up to the Zoroastrians, right? Zoroaster and his people to help the good and fight against evil, fight against Satan. And this is why the Persian people have always had that unction about them to go to basically be there for the Israelites and to save us out of trouble, right? When back in the time when they freed the southern kingdom from the Babylonians, right? And also what's going to come next, right? When the World War III breaks out, the Iranians, the Persians are gonna basically bomb Babylon again and help to destroy the people who are oppressing us Israelites. But again, that's just a little bit of an example about all these other nations, they all know that the God of the Bible is the God, but they worship him through different names. And ultimately, even if they don't worship him, right, or they don't reverence him, that it's the Lord who set them up regardless. And if they know it or not, though they may be trying to, give reverence to other gods or other pagan gods, it's the Lord who ultimately is over them and set them up and brought them down. Okay. Next, let's go and get this. This is Job 12:23. It says, he increases the nations and destroyeth them. He enlarges the nations and straighteneth them again. He taketh away the heart of the chief of the people of the earth, and causes them to wander in a wilderness where there is no way. They grope in the dark without light, and he maketh them to stagger like drunk men. Right? And we have examples of that, where the Lord took Nebuchadnezzar and basically turned him into a beast man, made him grow wings, and basically made him go crazy for I think like a year or something like that. And then he ultimately came back, and when he came back, he realized that that God was the true God, and that he was the one that truly reigned over all the people. So that being said, this shows you how the Lord raises up nations and brings them down again. And the Lord, just like he rose Pharaoh and the Egyptians up for a while, and he built them up with our help, the Israelites, how we made treasure cities for Pharaoh, and we helped keep that economy good to the point where Pharaoh wouldn't let us go. Because why? Because we provided all that labor, all that hard work, all that ingenuity that made Egypt great back in those days, right? We were the ones building those chariots, building a lot of these things that those Egyptians were living high off the high off the land off of, right? Well, the Lord ultimately destroyed those Egyptians. Well, the Lord is going to be doing the exact same thing to these Americans, these Edomites, who he raised up. He created great empires for them: America, Britain, Australia, all these different nations. And he's built, and these nations have all came to high excellency with the help of us Israelites, right? It was us who helped to build up America, right? We were the ones who basically built this without getting paid for it, man, right? And when you look at what is it? There's a great, it was a saying mentioned at a protest, right? This says, this land was stolen from the Indians, built by the Negroes, and maintained by the Latinos, right? And those three people are the Israelites, right? So that shows you, man, that the Lord uses us in these nations to build these nations up, to raise them up, right? But now the time that our punishment is over, the Lord is waking us up, the Negro, Latino, Native Americans, giving us back our true identity, that we are the biblical Israelites, and he's going to bring down this nation. He's going to destroy America, destroy the westernized powers. It's all here in the Bible. Okay, this is why they will do everything they can to push up these churches and give them all these tax credits, so that way you don't go into the Bible for yourself. You don't get into it. But what's happened? It's too late now. The cat's out of the bag. The teachings have been taught, as it tells you in the Bible, that the book shall be opened before the firmament. Right, and that goes all the way back to Abba Bivens back in the 50s, who has been teaching the truth of the Bible and has been basically pushing out the true narrative of what's really going on, which explains all the conspiracies of the world that have been pushed out, all the crazy shit that these elites are doing around the world, why they're doing it, right? Because when you understand that they're the Edomites and their time is limited here, right? They have bounds set upon them that they know that they can't pass. This is why they're crashing out right now. This is why they're ultimately trying to kill off a lot of people. This is why they're bringing in this prison planet that we're all going to be subject to, and that they're going to eventually bring in these microchips that they're going to make you implant. And this is why they're going to implode the economy very soon. Let's move on to this here. This is Second Ezra's. So why are these Edomites doing all this? Why are they bringing down the world economy and the world powers that be? And why are they bringing forward this new world order? Well, because they know what time we're in. They know that the Lord is soon to arrive, right? Hence why they're right now pushing that false asteroid that's coming, that they're now saying that Harvard professor is saying is a mothership, which, by the way, if you don't know it, Harvard is simply a Mossad fucking base. Okay, it is a Mossad propaganda machine. Okay, this is why all these crazy pro-Israel stories and studies always come out of Harvard. And this is why that professor at Harvard said that what is it, 3-1 or I-3 Atlas, that large interstellar comet that's racing, on the side of Jupiter right now. It's gonna hit, or it's gonna be racing by the sun starting in October or something like that. It's gonna hit there. He's saying that it's possibly a large mothership that's gonna come and attack the Earth. Why are they saying this? Because again, there is a government project called Project Bluebeam, where they're going to fake an alien invasion or an asteroid attack, and in doing so, then they are going to have a reason, or basically they're not going to have the ability to say, well, look, we got to prepare for the next oncoming onslaught, and they're going to weaponize space, which you can already see that they're doing right now with SpaceX, Blue Origin, and all this stuff. Okay. And what's going to eventually happen? What are they doing? Well, they are preparing for the true second coming of the Messiah, who, again, through popular media, we've all been trained to believe is going to be an alien invasion, which to us, it is going to look like an alien invasion, right? It tells us in the Bible that the clouds of heaven are like iron mountains, and that that all the eyes of the earth are going to see them. That right there is ultimately what we refer to as UFOs. Now, like it tells us here in the Bible that there's going to be a war in heaven. That war in heaven is going to be the American powers, along with NATO, along with all the nations of the world, fighting against the supposed UFO invasion. But ultimately, that's going to be the Messiah and the Lord. The Lord coming back to ultimately to reign over the world and destroy all the powers that be. Which is why they're going to be fighting the Lord, because they don't want to lose their seat of power. They want to continue their kingdom forever. This is this second Ezra's. Actually, let's read this. Well, we're talking about the UFOs. Let's read this. This is second Ezra's 13 and 5. It says, "And after this I beheld, and lo, there was gathering together a multitude of men out of number from the four winds of heaven to subdue the man that came out of the sea." Now, back in this time, the sea is what they refer to as space. Okay, it is only until about like the mid 18th century, or that they started referring to space as space. Right before then, they thought above us was a big ocean. Okay, so when the astronomers, in this case the prophets, referring to space, they refer to it as the sea. So like it says here, there was a great multitude of all the four corners of the earth gathered to subdue the man coming out of the sea. This is talking about over there in the land of Israel, right? The Levant area, the Middle East. Slowly, we're already seeing it now. You're going to see a gathering of all the armies of the world, all being sent over there and gathering there to do what? Well, to us, they're going to tell us that they're being over there to fight World War III, to free Israel or free the Palestinians. There's going to be so many reasons why they're going to say all the armies are being sent over there to the land of Israel. But what does the Bible say that they're there for? And it says, from the four winds of heaven to subdue the man that came out of the sea, because they are being sent there by the power elites. This is why we're telling you, the Russians, the Chinese, they're all in the elites' back pockets. Okay, this whole bullshit about America fighting against Russia or China, that's all for the people to believe that they're the bad guys and we're the good guys. But they all have been conquered and captured by the so-called Israelis, again, who are the biblical Edomites that the Bible tells us will eventually be revealed as the Antichrist of the Bible. Okay, and what are they doing? They're taking all these captured nations that they've captured over history, right? They've done it through communism. Right now in America, they're doing it through a form of communism, but it's known as socialism, right? Which eventually will be implemented in America as what's referred to as technocracy, right? Which is, instead of an authoritarian power being put over us, it's going to be these AI systems, these databases, these computers that are going to regulate your entire life. Because why? Because now they don't have to worry about setting up these what do they call them? These cult of personality leaders like Stalin, Hitler, and all this. Now they just got an AI system known as which the Bible refers to as the beast system. Over here, they're going to call it some different thing, right? What do they call those things? Stable coin, or the electronic, digital economy, right? Which the White House just signed into effect in July, which is going to come in October. Okay, because again, these devils are all getting ready. They're rushing to get all this stuff done. So again, in October, when the supposed asteroid or these aliens are coming, they're going to be here, is the same time they're going to push forward the new digital back-end economy system, right? Which is supposedly going to overtake the Federal Reserve System. And guess what? It's more likely the economy is going to collapse before then, right? Or they're going to at least put it in place. And what's going to happen is just like what happened down in Brazil, where they brought out the new world currency down there in Brazil, and they allowed the old Brazilian lira to basically inflate to holy hell. And what people did is they had a choice to stay with the old Brazilian lira, which was worth bullshit, or they could jump over to the new European currency, and they did. Because why? Because they did not want to lose their money, and that's more likely what's going to happen when they bring out these new digital dollars, right? They're going to tell people, well, you can stay in your old dollar, you can keep that money under your bed, but you know what? It's going to be worth nothing. You still have $20,000, but you're only going to be able to buy a pizza and a large Coke with that, right? Or if you convert it over to the new digital dollar, you'll be able to save your money. But hey, guess what? That digital dollar is going to have to go on a digital chip, which is going to go into your body. But they won't bring that out first. What they're going to first do is they're going to let you put it on your phone or your computer, right? And then later on, they're going to say, well, you know what? There's been so much corruption and so much fraud. We have to make sure that there's a biometric part of this. We got to make sure that it's you and it's not some scammer who's scamming you. And they're going to say that you're going to now need to put a chip in your hand or in your forehead. That forehead chip is that Neuralink, which Elon Musk is working on. This is the same reason why last week the Mexican government came out and said that they now are requiring all Mexican citizens to have the new CURP identity, which includes a biometric identification, which is your iris scan, your thumbprint. And again, just like here in America, over there, they're gonna require the people to put it into their body. Because again, what? They're gonna bring it out, and they're gonna allow the system to run amok. They're gonna allow all the fraudsters to do their thing and make all this money and scam the system, just like they did with these PPP loans. How they're putting all these incompetent mayors in these cities, and police chief ports, so that way these cities get run into the ground. So that way, why? Because they create the problem that causes a situation, right? Increased crime, increased food famine, increased corruption. And then what happens? And those same fucking devils come with their solution. It says, oh, look, I'm here as a white knight to come and save you. You now got to just give up your rights. And now you got to, so we can get these cities under control. We got to avoid posse comitatus, which is, posse comitatus is the constitutional law that says that the military can't come onto American soil. That's been eroded back when the Israelis destroyed the towers on 9/11. Okay, so this shows you, man, these devils are working little by little to basically chip away at the freedoms or the perceived freedoms here in America. But ultimately, it's all for a plan. It's all biblical, right? It's to destroy you Negro, Latino, Native Americans, and all those whose father's lineage goes back to that bloodline. Because why? Because you are the Israelites who are in a state of captivity right now until the Lord comes back. And those who rule over you, as the Bible says, those are your enemy and they hate you. And that what they're going to do is, before the end comes, they're going to ultimately try to enslave you permanently with those chips, which is a spiritual enslavement. Because again, remember, in the Levitical law, that if a slave wanted to stay with his master forever, that the master had to poke him through with an awl. An awl is like what we would know as an ice pick today, right? It's to make holes in leather so you could sew it. But again, that is the same thing as these chips that they want to put in your hand with a microchip. Because again, what you're doing is you're selling your soul to these devils. But either way, let's go and move on, and that'll be a lesson for another day. So it says, back to this, it says, verse 6, so now that this great multitude is gathered there in the Middle East, to subdue the Messiah coming back, what happens? Verse 6, but I beheld, and lo, he had grafted himself a great mountain and flew up upon it. What does this mean? That this man that came out of space, out of the sea, that he graved himself a great mountain. Grave means he created, okay? And that great mountain is, if you can see here in these images, you see this mountain range behind me? You see how it looks like mountains? This ship that the Messiah is going to call is going to be so large, it's going to create a huge mountain. Because it's going to go over the horizon. And Ezra, when he seen this image, he thought it was a mountain. But it wasn't a mountain. It was a so-called UFO. It was a huge ship that the Lord had called up. So, and what was the Lord going to do with it? Verse 7. But I would have seen the region or place where the heel was graven, and I could not. So meaning he couldn't see where this mountain all of a sudden appeared. That's because it came up over the horizon. And it says, verse 8, and after this I beheld, and lo, all they which were gathered together to subdue him were sore afraid, yet durst fight. So all those military men, when they see this and they see the Lord show up, they're going to be scared. But what's going to happen is they're going to be commanded to fight. They're going to be commanded, fire and all this stuff, and they're gonna fall in line, and they're gonna obey orders, and they're gonna fire upon the Lord. And that is the war in heaven that is spoken about. Verse 9, and lo, as he saw the violence of the multitude that came, he neither lift up his hand nor held sword nor any instrument of war, but only I saw that he sent out of his mouth as it had been a blast of fire, and out of his lips a flaming breath, and out of his tongue he cast out sparks and tempests. Now what this is talking about, it's not literally that the Messiah is going to be there, you're going to see something coming out of his mouth. Remember, he's seen the Lord go up on this great mountain, okay? And he just seen him disappear onto this great mountain that was in the foreground. That mouth that he's seen this come out of is like that center part of the UFO that we've seen in the movies, that a laser beam comes out, right? And right here, Ezra, not understanding what a laser beam or a direct energy weapon was, he described this as best as he could, right? A tempest, a fire, all right, a light beam, right? And what did this do? It came down upon these people, right? So it says, and it said, verse 10, but only I saw that he sent out of his mouth, it had been a blast of fire, and yet his lips, and out of his lips a flaming breath, and out of his tongue he cast out sparks and tempests, and they were all mixed together, the blast of fire, the flaming breath, and the great tempest, and fell with violence upon the multitude which was prepared to fight, and burnt them up every one, so that upon of a sudden of the innumerable multitude nothing was to be perceived, but only dust and the smell of smoke. When I saw this, I was afraid. So all those army people, all that weaponry that's being sent over to the Middle East, if you are being sent over to the Middle East and you're gonna be stationed out there, prepare to die, because you ain't coming back, because the Lord's gonna destroy all that military force out there, right? Remember, this is what Ezra said. So what happened is that those people were all destroyed. So there you go. So let's go and move on to this. Let's go back to 2nd Ezra 9 and 22. Because again, remember, the reason that all this is taking place is because the Lord is simply coming back to take over the world, to rule the world in righteousness. Because right now, the devils are in charge. And that's why the world is in a horrible state. This is why you can't afford anything. This is why we're all living these slave lives. Though before they were able to mask it as the American dream, right? The Monday through Friday, the 9 to 5. You can't even live anymore. Right now you got to work and slave yourself for these devils. And again, that's if you have it good. If you're unfortunate and living in these other third world countries that these Edomites have destroyed around the world, then you're barely scavenging by, man. You're living, look at the poor people over in Gaza, man, that are being blown to bits, man. Look at all the other people around the world, right, that are barely surviving, right? This is the example of what happens when the wicked are in rulership. But again, this had to happen because they had to show us what would happen when wickedness was allowed to reign over the world. Well, that experiment is now over, and the Lord is now coming back. And when he comes back, he's going to take all these corrupt powers off their thrones, right? That's why the Bible says until the thrones were cast down, right? Because again, the Lord's going to cast down all the thrones of all these power elites and take them out of power. But why is he doing that? Well, because of this. Because it is time for us Israelites to finally stand up and come up to our true selves. It says, this is 2nd Ezra's, let's see, 9 and, it's actually 22. Nine and 20. Actually, I'm gonna start on 20. And so I considered the world, and so this right here is the Most High, this is God, explaining that at the end time, that now when his children, the Israelites, are finally finished being cultivated, they've gone through their punishment, and they're finally ready to be saved and basically taken out of the fire and be put into a place of prominence back in our rulership. This is what the Lord's going to be doing compared for all the world, right? This is 2nd Ezra 9 and 20. So I considered the world, and behold, there was peril because of the devices that were come into it. Those devices that have come into the world are the devices that these Edomites have brought in. You know, equity firms, war, famine, capitalism, communism, all the isms, all the wicked ways that this world is being ran. Verse 21. And I saw and spared it greatly, and have kept me a grape of the cluster and a plant of a great people. That plant and that grape of a great people is us Israelites. Okay? That great people is talking about the people that came all the way back from Adam to that chosen bloodline or that seed line that we were reading about, right? Noah, his son Shem, his son Arphaxad, Eber, and Peleg, and all the way down to Terah, Abram, Isaac, and then eventually us, our forefather Isaac, or I'm sorry, Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel. Okay, we are that grape that the Lord is keeping out of all that cluster. And it says, verse 22, let the multitude perish, then which was born in vain, and let my grape be kept, and my plant, for with great labor have I made it perfect. And that's ultimately what's happening, right? See, the Lord is finally done with his filtering of the human genome. And the Israelites, who today would be known as the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, and all those whose father's lineage goes back to the bloodline or the seed line of Jacob, those are the true Israelites. It's not those Israelis over there in the land today that run the entire world, that own everything, that are committing genocide on live TV. Those are the false imposters that the Bible tells you would be revealed at the end days as the Antichrist. Okay? They are referred to as the nation of Edom. Okay? So that being said, let's read this, and then we're out of here. This is I'm trying to find this one scripture. this one here. Acts 4 and 12. Actually 11. This is Acts 4 and 11. This is the stone which was set at naught of you builders, which is become the head of the corner. Neither is there salvation in any other, for there is none other name under heaven given amongst men whereby we must be saved. And that name is Yahawah, BAHASHAM, YAHAWASHI. So again, God's true name is Yahawah, which is his only begotten son's name, who the world calls Jesus. His true Hebrew name is YAHAWASHI, which is Hebrew for he is salvation. So these are the names that we got to know, Akim. These are the truths that we got to know. Hopefully I was able to explain how this Bible is talking about everybody in the world, but how ultimately it is for only the Israelites. Okay, so with that, let's go and give all honor and glory and praises to Yahawah, BAHASHAM, YAHAWASHI, BAHASHAM QADASH, Barakatah Yahawah, Barakatah YAHAWASHI, Barakatah Yahawah, Barakatah YAHAWASHI, Barakatah Yahawah, Barakatah YAHAWASHI, BAHASHAM QADASH, Abath Babah. I'll see you all next week. Tawada for joining. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them down in the comment board. Until next time, Shalom.